I had only been gone for 10 days. Just 10. But when I walked up to my property, what I saw made my stomach sink. It looked like a circus had taken over my quiet, peaceful piece of land. Not just any land, but my personal sanctuary. My property had always been my haven, nestled on the edge of Willow Creek, surrounded by towering trees and carefully maintained lawns. But now, it was filled with chaos. There were 30 barking dogs, 2 porta-potties set up on my driveway, and there, standing on top of my barbecue grill, was a woman with a bullhorn. Yes, a bullhorn. And as she shouted into it, she proudly proclaimed, "As of today, this land is officially the Willow Creek Dog Freedom Park, brought to you by your HOA." She waved her arms in VY Tory, as if she had just discovered a new continent. That woman was Karen Stone, the self-appointed queen of the Willow Creek HOA. She had been the president for years, and let me tell you, she didn't just run the HOA, she controlled it. She'd already made life miserable for every resident who didn't toe the line. If you left your trash can out a minute too long, Karen was there, clipboard in hand, ready to issue a fine. If your lawn wasn't mowed to her exact standards, expect a sternly worded letter. But this was a whole new level of crazy. She was literally trying to take over my property. And the worst part? She thought she was in the right. As she stood there, grinning, surrounded by a crowd of clueless volunteers and dog owners, I felt a boiling anger rise inside me. This wasn't just some mistake or misunderstanding, this was a blatant violation of my rights, and Karen was walking all over them with the arrogance of someone who thought she could do no wrong. I stood frozen for a second, my suitcase still in hand, not sure if I was in some twisted nightmare or just seeing things. I saw dogs peeing on my mailbox, others chewing through the wires on my fence, and a volunteer stapling laminated dog park rules to my oak tree. The whole scene was a freak show. But Karen didn't care. As she saw me, she grinned and waved as if we were old friends. "Oh, hi, Mr. Reyes. You're just in time for the first official poop bag ceremony," she said, completely unfazed. "What in the ever-loving hell do you think you're doing on my land?" I managed to spit out, my voice barely holding steady. She looked at me with mock confusion. "Your land?" she repeated with that sickeningly sweet tone. "Oh, you must have missed the newsletter while you were away. Your land has been rezoned. Community space now. It's all very legal, voted on last Thursday. We even got city approval." I blinked. And then I blinked again. Not only had she taken over my land, but she was also telling me that it had been rezoned without my knowledge, without my consent. And to top it off, she was naming a dog fountain after my mother who had passed away 3 years ago. I was floored. This woman had absolutely no idea who she was messing with. See, Karen didn't know this, but I was the new zoning commissioner for Willow Creek. The ink on my appointment letter had barely dried, and I had just returned from a summit on urban planning in D.C. And now, here I was, standing in front of my own property that had been illegally taken over, with Karen thinking she had the upper hand. Well, she had no idea who she was dealing with. I calmly walked past her, dodging a kid on a scooter and a dachshund wearing sunglasses. I unlocked my barn and went inside. I was furious, but I knew I needed to stay calm and methodical. Inside the barn, things were a mess. Storage bins opened, garden tools scattered across the floor, and a banner across the rafters reading, "Welcome to Barkland." I snapped photos of everything. Every footprint, every nail, every shovel left behind. I was getting all the EVY denke I needed because when this exploded, I wanted the receipts. I wanted the world to see how deep Karen's delusion ran. The next day, I went through every zoning map, deed, and municipal document. My land had been zoned as private residential for 14 years. There had been no application for rezoning, no hearings, no votes that complied with municipal code. Karen had filed no formal paperwork. What I did find, though, was a napkin with a doodle of the dog park layout, signed only by Karen and a couple of her friends. I laughed bitterly. This woman honestly thought she could just make a park appear through sheer narcissism and a Photoshop doodle. By day 3, Karen had launched a website of Barkland for Willow Creek, or with a donation button, a fake list of sponsors, and a countdown to the grand opening. I watched it all unfold from my truck across the street. She was delusional and worse. She had started using HOA funds to pay for it. One of her own board members, Carlos, slipped me the budget sheet at a gas station, whispering, "I didn't sign up for this." That's when I decided enough was enough. She was making a mockery of not just my property, but of the entire community. I was about to shut her down. I drafted an official cease and desist order, citing violations of zoning laws, and printed it on city letterhead. But I wasn't going to just send it. No, I wanted the moment to be cinematic. I wanted her to put on her dog park extravaganza, thinking she had one, only to watch her world come crashing down. The day of the bark extravaganza arrived, and it was even more absurd than I could have imagined. There were food trucks in my driveway, a brass band playing in the parking lot, and a giant arch made of squeaky dog toys that spanned the entrance to my property. It was like a kindergarten carnival mixed with a cult initiation. Karen strutted around in a sash that said, "Park Mother," posing for photos with a smug look on her face, as if she had already won. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even surprised. I was done pretending this farce deserved any more leash. I had the cease and desist letter in hand, the legal paperwork all ready to go. I was going to deliver it in front of everyone, right as Karen was about to cut the ribbon and officially declare her dog park. At noon sharp, Karen stood on a plywood podium, microphone in hand, and began her speech. "We stand today on what was once forgotten land," she said, her voice amplified across the block. A patch of unused space claimed by weeds and rust. But today, we make it bark. We make it wag. We make it free. That was my cue. I walked down the slope from my porch, wearing a black collared shirt with the Willow District emblem stitched on the chest and my zoning commissioner badge clipped to my belt. The crowd went silent as soon as they saw me. Karen froze mid-sentence. She looked like she had just seen a ghost. I stopped at the base of her little plywood throne. The crowd held their breath as I addressed Karen. "Karen, you are currently standing on private property without permission, operating an unauthorized construction zone, and hosting a public event without a permit. Please step down and vacate the premises immediately." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Mark, dear," she said with a nervous laugh, "this isn't the time for jokes. Can't you see we're mid-ribbon cutting?" I pulled the folder from under my arm, holding it up for everyone to see. "This is a formal cease and desist order backed by the City Planning Board, Code Enforcement D.Y. Shown, and the Zoning Commission of Willow District, of which I am the acting commissioner." Her face went pale. The crowd started murmuring. Someone in the back whispered, "Wait, he owns this land?" Karen panicked, but it was too late. I had the proof. She had been caught. I showed them the fake zoning document she had presented to the HOA, and the city inspector and 2 code enforcement officers arrived just in time to back me up. Karen tried to run, but the crowd wasn't on her side anymore. They had seen through her lies. As the officers began their inspection, I stepped up to the mic and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I know many of you came here in good faith, misled by promises and false documents. This property was never rezoned. No city agency approved this. The funds used to build this park were misappropriated, and this park will be dismantled by court order." The crowd slowly started to disperse, some nodding in agreement, others backing away in embarrassment. Karen's downfall had begun. The footage went viral that night. The headline read, "HOA President's Dog Park Dream Turns into Legal Disaster." Karen's wild claims were now ridiculed by the public. She had used HOA funds, forged documents, and manipulated residents for months. But it all fell apart in front of the world. Karen's fraud case progressed, and she found herself facing legal consequences, including restitution and a permanent ban from any future HOA involvement. Her once perfect suburban life crumbled. She moved out quietly, her reputation shattered. As for my land, I decided to make something better out of it. I partnered with a local school to create a green space, a peaceful place for students to learn about nature. It became a spot for everyone to enjoy, a far cry from the chaos Karen had tried to create. One morning, a little girl came up to me with a card. "Are you the man who made the barking stop?" she asked shyly. I smiled and said, something like that. It was moments like this that made everything worth it. And as for Karen, her chapter in Willow Creek was over. The community had reclaimed its voice. It was stronger, now no longer afraid to stand up for what was right. If you've ever been bullied by someone in power, remember, you're not alone. Stand up, speak out, and don't let anyone control you with lies. What do you think of Karen's actions? Was justice served? Leave a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's talk about how communities can hold the powerful accountable.